So you spent the bulk of the last section in class manipulating, data to create an overview. Begin thinking about priority question, to be thinking about, what is it, does this, where's this data taking us? And so this section of class is really going to be less time in manipulating data and, more time um, thinking about, how to work with um, the other adults looking at this data to start to get a sense of a learner-centered problem that's going on, with this data. And so we know that in our readings, we, went from, looking at a single data source to looking at multiple data sources. And so that the use of multiple data sources really can help triangulate the data to really get a better sense of what are the patterns telling us, to confirm or reject that. And the multiple data sources is a great way to engage staff in getting them to be the ones to create that identify that learner-centered problem. And you're going to want to keep in mind, and I know I've said this already before with the priority question, but if you're the one manipulating the data, or if you're the one organizing the agenda for the data meeting, or bringing everyone together, you sometimes will have to be careful. You'll walk a fine line of telling them what the problem is and having them understand that on their own, so that they have more ownership of that, and that they also feel part of it. So let's just look at an example. So if I take this is a that fifth grade PSSA, and what I did here to start was I looked at a single source of data. And so I sorted this by the overall proficiency uh, for the PSSAs. And so then I started to look at other data sources within that PSSA that might perhaps tell me a little bit more about why these five students are not scoring proficient on the PSSAs, like in understanding how they're performing on the multiple choice, provide some information to me. Might I look at their ability to respond to questions related to author's purpose or craft and structure in this column, right? Or am I considering those students and how they're performing on the text-dependent analysis? So that essay where students have to write about perhaps one or two pieces of literature and write a response to argue a theme or make an assertion about what's going on in that literature. I can certainly look at these five students, and when I look at the open-ended, this is certainly an area that is not necessarily a concern for them. That they are able to respond to what's the main idea and support that with details from the passage. But yet, when they're asked to do that on a longer essay, perhaps they have a little bit more difficulty in that area. And so, we can think about, you know, what's the student thinking here? They respond well in open-ended, but not in the multiple choice. And so we want to be looking over those segments to start to get a sense of, well, what is it here that is that learner-centered problem? And so if we just take that single data source and we look at the craft and structure, we can see that 10 out of 25 are below in the craft and structure category. This should be red. Um, I had to change that so that it was red. Sometimes the formatting jumps when I save it. So when I just tease out those 10 students, okay, who struggled with craft and structure, I can now start to look across some other data sources. And so, we see that for the overall reading level for fifth grade, that's not necessarily an issue. We have one, except for one student. We see that accuracy is not necessarily an issue, so we could make an assumption that our students are reading the words correctly for the most part. And we could certainly jump over here to words per minute and see that we have, you know, a slower reading rate, right? And so, especially, if you look at this one student, is he reading too fast? Are these students, their accuracy might be strong, but are they spending too much time on word recognition, right? I could even tease over to the developmental spelling assessment. It gives us insight into students, perhaps word decoding and encoding, and their ability to really chunk, multisyllabic words. And so then I can go back to this and say, well, what in these areas perhaps may be causing this overall breakdown for craft and structure and comprehension, maybe for some of them, and perhaps not others, depending on what they're being asked. And so that we know, we could start to ask ourselves, are students reading closely enough, right, to think about getting that to that learner-centered problem. So what we're going to do now, I'm kind of stopping, early so that we can go ahead and go back to the sample data set that you looked at earlier for the priority question. And you can either use that data set or you can use the one from your own classroom project. And there's a link under the video that will take you to the following Google Doc. And so if you're using the sample data set that I provided, you're already going to have the priority question. You're going to want to start to think about what is the learner-centered problem. And really where you want to spend the bulk of your time is to think about how will you engage the staff, right? What questions can you ask the teachers to help them come to understand the data? Like I said before, you're the one organizing, you probably already have something in mind. And so you're going to want to think about um, how to lead them to that. This is really the place where you're going to, bring a story into the data. You're going to want to bring that to life. And your main focus is, going to be wanting to reduce the feeling of trust or mistrust with data. So, sometimes teachers can feel negative when looking at their data, maybe personal. And so we want to try to depersonalize that and really make this an objective exercise, not negative, and really just getting at what's going on here. Because the goal when we're done this part is to begin thinking about what's a problem of practice so that we can start creating an action plan. So if you decide to use the sample data set, you certainly, I will already have kind of a sense of what's going on in that data. If you want to use your own data from that way you can start using that for your assignment, which is due next week. You just either share the document via Google, or you can post it in the weekly Dropbox, which I'll be able to view it there, or email it to me. Just a way that I can get to it so that I can better understand your question and your learner center problem, and provide you some feedback.